Hi, everyone, and welcome to Braindrop, the VCOM podcast where we invite our experts to stop by and drop a little of the latest digital transformation tech on our listeners.
Hi, everyone. It's Jethro Castillo from VCOM, and today I am joined by John Adams, our Vice President of Expense Management. Being in telecom for over 30 years, John found that many companies face two great problems when managing their expenses. One, they spent too much time and money on expense management, and two, they did not have great visibility into what they were spending, resulting in ineffective decision-making. In this episode, John talks about a better way to manage your IT expenses with better visibility so you can make better decisions and focus more on the core mission of your business. Enjoy. John, why don't you kind of introduce yourself however you want?
I'm John Adams. I'm the Vice President of Expense Management for VCOM. And what that means is I support our teams that really deliver our expense management program to our customers. And the expense management program is built on ingesting invoices into our vManager software. Then we can apply accounting to those invoices where we can do cost center, GL coding, and classify those charges so a company can see those in their AP program, and then providing analytics and reporting that lets you know what you're spending, where you're spending it, and how you're using your various IT assets. And that really gives a company visibility into what they're doing. So our teams that are doing that are really delivering that value of visibility, and then the processing that they do and the things that they do to really provide insight and to help companies in these various areas. So my role is really just to support those teams and make sure they have tools and understanding of where we need to go, and that we develop, new and better ways of doing what we're doing.
Yeah. So what exactly got you into expense management, specifically in the telecom IT sort of industry?
Sure. Yeah, I was in telecom for over 30 years. So going way back, and part of my experience in telecom, and I worked in a variety of areas, international, local, all kind of different areas in telecom. One of the places that I had a stop that I was at for a while, we actually helped manage the billing systems for telecom vendors. And we were helping them build those billing systems and put those, the systems in place that create invoicing for the vendors. And so that experience really led me to understand how, companies don't have great visibility into what they're spending. And so I was, sort of looking for a different opportunity. I'd really been in telecom on the supply side for a very long time. And I was looking for something where I could leverage that experience in another area. And I found this company that did telecom expense management 15 years ago. It was a pretty new idea back then. Was really just kind of gaining traction, but I found a company, and it really brought my experiences together. Right. So I understood telecom, I understood how companies bought telecom. I had been on the sales side and the solution side. And then I understood how the vendors' billing systems worked and how invoicing really works and how you can gain access into the data. And so it really just sort of brought all of that together. And so, here I am 15 years later at VCOM, and the idea has expanded. At one time, it was really about long distance, which was, back then people actually paid long distance rates, and you were trying to make sure that they were using the best rates. And it's really evolved now into overall IT spend in many different areas. So it's a really interesting industry to be in. And it's really, it's been a great place for me. I really enjoy helping companies understand what they're doing and better ways to go about doing it.
You touched on it when you were introducing yourself, but sometimes maybe as a company, I can go, okay, yeah, expense management, that's important. I need to make sure that I'm managing my expenses, knowing where everything's going. But right now I have other important things to focus on. If you were to hear that, how would you go, no, prioritizing that can be very valuable to a business?
Sure. Well, there's actually two aspects of that. One, we agree completely that you've got better things to do, right? Someone has to manage the invoices. You're going to get bills that you have to pay, right? And so you can have people that you employ that manage that. Well, that takes away part of, your focus in doing something that's not core to your business, right? So someone's got to process them. Someone's got to get, the information into your AP system. That has to happen. right? And so you can hire people and do it yourself and have people spending a lot of time pulling away from your core business to do these things that are routine and rote, and without systems to support them, you have people doing a lot of manual work. And what you really aren't getting is the insight into, the deep data that's involved in these invoices. They're very large, they're very complex. And when you don't have a system like vManager and a program like we have, you're not really seeing what you're spending. You know a dollar amount that you're spending, and maybe you've got a pretty simple classification of that expense. But until you have something like vManager behind you, you're not breaking those charges down by department, by location, by employee expense, and really seeing what you're spending and where you're spending it and making better decisions about it. And that's the real core. Is it has to be done. Why not use a system like we have that provides better insight, and you don't have to do all of those manual things it takes to acquire the invoice, to load the data, to apply cost center and GL coding, because our system, we're purpose built to do that with vManager. So we can break those charges down in, much smaller categories. So you've got much better visibility across it. We could do some analytics. When we get into our analytics and we start showing companies, here are different locations you have and the different amounts that you're spending here. And then, we can help them to learn, well, this office is larger, this office is smaller. That's why some of your cost structure is different. And then they can start to see, maybe where they've got, too many services somewhere, not enough somewhere else, and they're not really supporting the business in the way that they can. And those are better decisions for them to make, right? How do I enable my core business to be more successful through the information I can get in this expense management program? And that's really where we come in, right? We do the heavy lifting so you don't have to, but you get the high level benefit of running your business in a better way and making those better decisions because of the visibility that we can provide you, and because you're not spending your time doing these routine things that take you away from making those decisions about your business.
What do you see as kind of almost the hesitations?
Sure, yeah. And one of the things that we see quite often is, companies have developed a method of doing these things, right? They're doing them. And over time, they've developed a system for the way that they go about doing it that's worked for them. And quite often it's using spreadsheets or, again, manual data entry, that sort of thing. But they've gone through this pain of building this system that they put in place that they know that it works, right? And most often what we find is we have to help people understand how, a purpose-built software with the professionals that we have that are subject matter experts can elevate that from just getting things entered into the system to providing better insight and to providing, better analytics and better information. And, even at a more granular level, what you'll very often find is, companies take very large, complex invoices and they apply a very simple, GL coding to it because that's what they have the ability to do. Most of it, quite often it's in educating the customer and what's available to them. Since they haven't seen a system like we have, they haven't experienced what we can do, they don't understand how we can derive that value. But very, very often we walk them through, they see how simple the software is to understand, how they'll be able to see the information. And once we get it in there and our teams have taken over, that it's, their interaction with it is really making decisions from the data that they see and not just trying to get the data, right? And so they've been fighting this uphill battle just to get the information. They haven't really been able to do the analysis of it. Well, now they can see how that happens, right? And that's really when the mindset changes, once they see that, it's built into the system, we're not having to do, and particularly they aren't having to do all this manual intervention with the data every month and taking away from the things they could be doing. That's when the light starts to go off and they can really see how the value is going to be derived, that's a lot of fun when you start to get there with your customers.
Yeah. Okay. So let me see if I understand it correctly. So the first thing that it really does is it does save you that time. You no longer have to manually put it into spreadsheets and kind of keep track of it yourself. You kind of now have this platform that just does it for you, and any sort of invoice is then put in and stuff like that. But that's not where it stops. It also then we have the capability of organizing it and refining it and putting it into more granular sort of things. So now the data becomes even more effective data. It's not just that big overall spend or maybe which carrier it's coming from. It's which department, which location, and stuff like that. So now you're able to make decisions for specific locations, for specific departments, and all of that time that is saved, and I would imagine all that money is saved, then allows you to use that data, analyze that data, and then make decisions moving forward. So it's almost like it's not even an additive thing. It's almost pretty exponential. It's like you save time, you save money, and then you can use that time and money to make better decisions based off of the data that you were given. And that's kind of the big jump there, is what you're trying to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got it. That's 100% what it is. Rather than spending your time trying to process invoices, get them approved, get GL coding, get that information in your AP system, we do all of that for you. So now you get the data and you can analyze that and make better decisions about what you're doing. And there are cost savings that are involved in that, just hard dollar costs where you'll find things that, expenditures you have that are really unnecessary or you're overpaying. One of the big benefits that we can provide is our benchmarking service, which really integrates our expense management with our planning and procurement team, where, once we start loading the data into our expense management, that planning and procurement team has that rich data as well. And so they're accustomed to seeing that, and they can tell you that, various circuits you're purchasing in various areas, we see other customers that have better pricing. We can help you go negotiate that. And that's when all 9 phases start to come together, right? That's why we have sort of the circle that we show where, everything really feeds into one another. Our teams can help you with that analysis as well and help you make more of those decisions based on what we see other companies doing and spending in the areas that you're in. So that's when it really gets very, very powerful.
I like the bringing back of that cycle, because it's like you get that expense, you see the data, you make a better decision, but then you get to analyze that again and then be better and better and better and better.
So our implementations team comes in and they're really working with you to understand your environment, what you've been doing, how we translate that and automate that for you. And so that initial setup, there's a big learning curve, right? So you're coming in, learning how this works. We're learning more about you and how you operate. And then as we start to load those invoices month after month after month, and we start to give you analytics that show you a quarterly trend, a 6-month trend, a year trend, and you can see the changes in your environment. Now, that's one thing that you really can't get in the manual processes is how are things working over the last few months, right? We've reduced some costs, we've made these changes, and now we can track, hard dollar savings that we have, the time that we're saving. And as we move over those months and months, it just continues to get better and better. And then now you've got a new habit of how you're managing this from the old system you had with the manual intervention and all of that. Now you've learned how to use your time better in the analytics and making the decisions. And so it really starts to pay off. And you're using the system more and more and using the analytics more and more. And you're right, it does compound. It's, you kind of get this, develop new muscle memory, if you will, where, we were really successful in, these 4 locations. Well, now we're going to take on these other 2 locations and the other 2. And particularly, we have many customers that acquire other companies. And one of the things that it really benefits them is they have this system in place, and the new company, they can feed that in and start loading that into vManager. Now they've got a view that they're familiar with of expenses they're not familiar with, but they understand that now they can read what the new company that they've acquired has and start to make decisions about redundancies they have with, the systems they already have in place and the expenses that they have and all of that. It makes those transactions go much faster, and you can really create some savings there where, sometimes if you don't have a system like this, it could take you a year just to figure out what is there, right? But now you've got a visual that you're accustomed to seeing and a process you're accustomed to going through, and you feed this new information into it, and you get there much, much faster on the new spend and the new information that you have coming in.
Yeah, you kind of already answered the question that I'm about to ask, but I'm still curious. Are there any other, because you mentioned, companies that acquire others, any other stories about how doing it better kind of improves a business that you've seen?
Sure. We see it. We see that across so many different customers, right? It's the great thing is, we have, for example, some large banks, right? And banks are just notorious for acquiring, part of the company, spinning off part of the company and selling it. And, that's really what they spend a lot of their time doing. So, some of our larger banks, because they know what they have and where it is, let's just say that they're selling off part of the company to another bank. And it's, that transaction, normally they would have to go back through all of these spreadsheets they have and, figure out what are the services at those locations? What are the invoices we need to transfer? Now they go into vManager, they pull up those locations. They have all the information at their fingertips. They hand it over to the acquiring company. Here's everything that we need to turn down. You need to take it over. And one of the things that they're doing is not just, they're earning what they've earned for selling those, but they need to cut those expenses and get them off their books as quickly as they can. This really enables that to happen, right? You know exactly what it is, exactly what needs to be turned over. You can make that transition happen much, much faster. And you see that just over and over again. And even companies that, let's just say maybe you're a company that you're consolidating offices, right? You say, well, a couple of offices are kind of close to each other. In order to try and sort of cut some expenses or be more efficient, we're going to move into one office. Well, what are all the services we have that we're going to be able to turn down, save that money? But it's right there at your fingertips rather than trying to guess or missing something that, you don't end up moving or eliminating, which was the entire purpose of what you wanted to do. Right. And those are some of the things that they're not intuitive that, oh, well, you're just processing my invoices and giving me GL coding. That's sort of the second layer of, where this can really have a benefit. Not just that day-to-day processing, which is very important as well, but when you're making more strategic decisions about your business and you're making more strategic decisions about, offices that you have or, parts of the company that you're bringing in new parts or you're spinning off parts to other people, you really need that insight into it. And it just makes those transactions happen much faster. And you realize those cost savings that
Absolutely.
You're aiming for much faster.
We're almost out of time. So any kind of final closing thoughts you have?
It becomes mission critical to the customers once they understand how it works and they work with us for a little while. We have customers that would not make a decision to do anything without, referring to the data that we can provide to them. And it's the great thing is there's so much that we put in, it's just in vManager. You can just log in, click on charts, graphs, reports. You can get data broken down in many, many different ways. And even, one of the great benefits is you can create your own report. If you've got, let's just say the director of IT has a report that he owes to the CFO on a quarterly basis of expenses and things like that, that can be generated directly out of vManager. And it's there. You can have it anytime you want it, easy to provide. We hear horror stories of, oh, well, it takes me 4 days to get this information together every quarter. And, I lose focus on all the other things I have to do because I've got to put this together. And, manual processes are fraught with errors and things like that. Now you have it in vManager. Just go in and click and send it to the CFO or tell him. You can go, we get the CFO to log in. He can log in and see the report anytime he wants to, which is even better, right?
Yeah,
it's always
absolutely.
there at your fingertips.
Well, John, thank you so much for your time. Hugely insightful, absolutely incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
If you have any questions about the topics you hear on BrainDrop, feel free to email us at braindrop@vcomsolutions.com. Thanks for listening.